Let's welcome in our buddy Jon Machota. Jon, how are you? Happy Friday. Happy Valentine's Day, my friend.
Hey, same to you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, there's always news happening in Cowboys country. This week was no different, but I did see you posted the final roster when it comes to the coaching staff. Now that it's kind of all said and done, what are some of your takeaways from this badass staff Schotty's been putting together?
I'm going to be honest with you. If we're talking about my biggest takeaway, it really is the fact that Jason Witten's not on the staff.
Oof.
I thought for sure that when they were moving on from Mike McCarthy and going in another direction, I thought there was a really good chance that Jason Witten would be on the next staff. And then when they said that it was going to be Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach, I thought that increased the chances that Jason Witten would be on the staff. So when I look at that staff as a whole, and I think if a lot of other people that follow the team are being honest with themselves, if you just go back 3-4 weeks ago, that would be the biggest thing that stands out to me is that he's not on the staff. And the reason why I say it is because I think a lot of people just looked at it as, oh, well, then whoever they hire as the head coach, it's just going to be someone that's going to be willing to bring on Witten because that's what Jerry's going to want. And obviously that didn't end up being the case. And so that would be line one. That's number one for me when I look at the staff. The other one is just that I think it's pretty clear that they're just going with more guys that, you know, kind of coming from the college ranks. And so that's not something we've really seen. And so because of that, it's not just a straight, direct, oh, this is, you know, Schottenheimer's tree. It seems like he's really he tried to turn over, you know, every stone and find something a little bit different. And I think it looks pretty good on paper, but I don't think we really know until, you know, we start seeing some stuff maybe out in Oxnard, or maybe we have to wait till the start of the season. But it seems like they got some pretty good momentum with the guys they brought in. And I just think that a lot of things that they're hoping from this staff are stuff that I thought it was pretty obvious they have to do. Like they have to fix the run game. Yeah. And so it seems like with the staff they brought in, that's going to be a major part of the game plan.
Micah had the comments yesterday, Jon, quote, I don't want to sit back and just watch other people build and build and build and we stay the same. So we definitely need some call to action. Do you envision that actually being the approach where they're a little bit more active than we're accustomed to?
A little more, sure. But anybody that's thinking it's going to be some drastic change, I don't believe that at all. There's been nothing that they've shown for over a decade that would make me think it's going to be a lot different. I think the possibility would be something like a couple off seasons ago when you saw the trade for Stephon Gilmore and the trade for Brandon Cooks. I think that's a possibility, that type of an offseason. But in terms of like making some big move to get Myles Garrett and some of these other things that people throw out, if it was 1995, the current way that it's run, no, I don't see any major changes like that. And I get where Micah's coming from. I mean, heck, Micah speaks for, I would say, 99.9% of the fan base when he says that. I mean, heck, it's not difficult to feel that way when you see how the Eagles have been doing it for the last 6, 7 years, 8 years, and then obviously with just how dominant they were in the Super Bowl, they certainly seem like they're laying out the blueprint for how it's done. And that doesn't mean that you're going to hit on every swing, but they take swings. They miss. They pay Carson Wentz, swung and miss. They give money to guys like Bryce Huff, who, I don't think he was even active for the Super Bowl. And so it's not like they hit on everything, but they're very aggressive. And I totally get where Micah's coming from. When you think of the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones as the owner, that's what you expect. But that just hasn't been how the Cowboys have been run for a while.
You know, when you look at this, Jon, is there a real possibility that they're not going to sign their own? That, you know, that they really are evaluating? I mean, I was listening to you just talk for a minute ago, but, you know, the one thing the Eagles have taught me is, you can draft. You can also play in free agency. Coaching matters. You know, there's kind of things setting it up, but do you think they really are in a situation where they say, we're not going to sign Oso Digizua. We're not going to sign Jordan Lewis. We're not going to sign Golston. We're going to go sign somebody from the Buccaneers or sign somebody from the Saints or sign somebody from the Seahawks. Is that a real possibility?
I think it is. And I'll say that I think because out of all the names you said, the Oso one jumps out the most just because he's going to be the most expensive.
Right.
They could do that. And hey, let's be honest. They, in a way, kind of did that in 2020 when Mike took over as head coach.
Right.
But the problem was that there were a lot of swings and misses, you know. I mean, Gerald McCoy got hurt, the Don Terry Poe move. Who else was in there? Clinton Dix.
Yeah.
There were a lot of, they tried to do it that way. And so I think a lot of fans would like that. They'd like to see it because then you could point, hey, that's a change. That's different. I think there's a lot of fans who would like to see them get Micah's contract done before free agency starts because that would show you, hey, there's something different going on here. But they haven't shown us any reason to think that it is going to be very different. And so that's the only reason why I'm kind of cautious about selling too much hope to the fans that there's going to be big changes. Because I'll tell you this, from being at that Brian Schottenheimer press conference, when Steven had talked about in that press conference about how maybe we need to evaluate things,
right.
that provided some fuel to the fire to the fans. And I'm just kind of trying to, I want to be a little cautious, and I want them to be a little cautious in thinking that, because while that sounds great and you'd like to see that, and that's what you would hope from the Dallas Cowboys, we just haven't seen that for a while. So you got to be kind of cautiously optimistic when you hear that.
John, I'm going to be honest with you. When you and I go eat Mexican food in Oxnard, I'm going to be talking with you that there's a chance that this team might be as worse as they were this year. You're being, you're a tap the brakes kind of guy, but would I be wrong thinking in that?
Well, I'll say this: there's a huge part of this, and I think about this when I think of the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Lions. One of the biggest differences between the Eagles and all those teams are they were very fortunate in the health department. Not so much for the Lions, 49ers, and Cowboys. So if you tell me that even if they don't bring out maybe as great of a team on paper, I could still see them being as good or better because of the fact of, hey, you get a full season of Dak and Micah and CD and whoever, and let's say they stay relatively healthy. I do think that Brian Schottenheimer could bring in some changes on offense. Let's say maybe they draft like an Ashton Jeanty. I can see an area where, hey, there's kind of a newness in the building, and there's an excitement, and guys are kind of riding that, and they go into the season where the expectations aren't as high, and people kind of think that they're going to be a disappointment, and then they kind of surprise people, kind of in the way that Washington did this year. That is possible. I know it's a long time ago, but I had those feelings in 2016. How bad they were in 15 and how injured they were and stuff, and I was like, man, yeah, they're playing a lot of young guys. And then 16, they win 13 games and had one of the most exciting Cowboy seasons of the last 20 years. So sometimes when expectations are low, they were low going into 14, and that was one of the best Cowboys teams of the last 20 years. And so it's tough to say with this team that even if it doesn't look as good on paper, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be better. My thing is, though, is if you don't start doing more moves like the Eagles, I don't see you getting close to doing the thing where the Eagles go to 3 Super Bowls in 8 years. And ultimately, that's what teams like the Dallas Cowboys should be doing.
Amen. Jon Machota with us here in the GBag Nation on 105 through the Fan. Do you think, because we get asked that a lot, do you think seeing the Eagles play in 3 Super Bowls in 8 years, seeing the Commanders playing them in an NFC Championship game does anything to move the needle there in Frisco?
The Commanders one, not as much, because I think a lot of people just put that on, hey, you guys were bad and got a top 2 pick, and you absolutely hit on your quarterback of the future. And that's a big part of their success. There was the Eagles. It's like, that's the blueprint, and that's what you guys can be doing. Like, the Eagles aren't doing anything that you can't. And all the way to the MVP of that game. Like, there's nothing that Jalen Hurts, obviously, yeah, he's a better runner than Dak Prescott, but you put those weapons around Dak Prescott can win at the highest level too. And yeah, you're not paying Jalen Hurts $60 million, but you're paying him $50. So there's just, they've paid guys, they've swung and missed. They're just showing you like that this is the blueprint. Like, if you want to do it, this is the way that you do it. They're not doing anything that you can't do. And so because of that, you hope that's the case. But there is a part of me that if you watch this Cowboys team, the way they operate as a franchise over the last 10, 15 years, that you just start to believe that they believe that they're doing it the best way that they believe it is how you do it as running the Dallas Cowboys, and that their way has been, it's a good way and that it's productive. And to a certain extent it is. But I don't get the sense that they feel like they're as drastically off of things as maybe we feel like.
Do you think they actually get Micah Parsons done ahead of time?
I don't. I think that it'll be one of those by training camp. Maybe they get right before training camp, but I will be surprised if it's one of those that's done, like the week before free agency or when free agency starts. and then leads to them making some aggressive moves. I would be surprised if that happened. I mean, I'd be pleasantly surprised. It'd be entertaining to write about, and I know the fans would be excited. And this is a time when I don't know. I've never covered the team when there's been more apathy than there is right now. So that's 14, 15 years. So that would make a lot of sense. That would be great. But I don't see that happening. And I think Micah would be willing to take a little bit less to maybe get something to go to get it done a little bit earlier. But I don't know that David Mullighetto wants to do that. I mean, he's got what he thinks is the best defensive player in football. You think he wants that guy taking a bargain? And so because of that, I don't. I think it'll be maybe in July.
Hey, John, do you think the fan base, and you talk about apathy and all that, but do you think this fan base would be better, would understand better if they did go out and they made a big swing and they did have some success, but it cost them like 2 years down the road of not being good? Do you think the fan base would be like, listen, we're cool with that, but you went and got us something that we've been coveting for years now? Do you think that the fan base would stay on their rear about it, or would they, like, hey, you did it the one time. If you're bad a couple years, we're okay with that. Just swing this thing back the other way.
I think that most fans would be fine with it if it was 2 or 3 moves. It can't just be one player. Like, it couldn't just be one. If they went and they made, like, because I even think back to when I first started covering the team, there was that off season where, remember when Philly went after and they got like Vince Young, and I think it was around that time, Nam Diasawa and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was in San Antonio. Yeah.
And so there was swings and misses there, but it was clear, like, hey, they're going for it. I think the fan base would be like, hey, if that costs us like a couple of years, we could understand that, because at least we could point back to be like, hey, they tried.
Yeah.
And they invested in some guys that, hey, it just didn't pan out. But I think because of the 29 years since the last Super Bowl, seeing Washington and seeing Detroit get to the NFC Championship game when you haven't been there in 29 years, I think a lot of that stuff makes fans be like, you know what? If this means that we're going to have whatever salary cap hell or whatever in 3 or 4 years, we'll deal with that then. Let's go all in right now. CD's in his prime, Dak's in his prime, Micah's in his prime. Let's empty the tank right now. We'll pay for it later.
I kind of feel like, though, if you have success, and then 2 really bad years, you kind of reset everything. You get to draft high again. It gives you an opportunity. It's like they don't punish you for being bad. They say, oh no, wait, we'll let you pick. We'll let you pick in the top 10.
Parity-driven league.
Yeah, we'll let you pick all. If you want to just keep picking in the top 10, be bad for a couple years. That's
a good point. That's a good point, because a lot of people, when you say that, obviously you're going to think of Philly, and like I said, I mean, they swung and missed on Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
The Niners swung and missed on Trey Lance. But the other team that I look at with that I'm keeping a close eye on, especially this offseason, because it seems like they're going to make some moves, but the Rams are another one, because there's no question.
Oh, they're going to do it. Yeah.
They put in everything, but they've also they've hit on some draft picks. They've replaced guys to where you can be willing to move on from Cooper Kupp because you found Puka Nacua, and they drafted a Jared Verse that's Defensive Rookie of the Year. So they've been able to kind of parlay some of that stuff. It's interesting to see like how that will work out for them. Obviously, having a franchise quarterback, let's see what happens there. But that's a team that I'll be looking at too, because I thought for sure after they won that Super Bowl, I was like, well, this team's they're gonna fall pretty hard, and they're gonna be out of it for a while. And last time I checked, they made the playoffs this year.
You got to be there talking with Dak at the Children's Cancer Fund along with Troy Aikman. What did you think initially of his very close comments when talking about the Eagles?
I mean, I can't say I was surprised, because when Dak has been on the field, the Eagles haven't been a team to him where you're just like, man, how can we ever get to that level? So, but he wasn't on the field this year against that Eagles team, and so that's why it's a little bit different. I don't think he probably shouldn't have said that just by how dominant the Eagles looked in the Super Bowl against a guy like Patrick Mahomes, really having Patrick Mahomes play at a level that we've never seen him play that badly. So it's not a great time to say that, but it does show that he really believes that they're not that far away. So I guess that's a good thing. I think that's what you want from your franchise quarterback. I mean, it made for a good soundbite, so I was happy to post the video. But I don't think I would have said that in that situation. But I'm also not a franchise quarterback.
John, obviously we do a lot of work when it comes to the draft, and offensive line always comes up. Should they go back into the offensive line pipe and draft that in the first round? How do you think they feel about Tyler Guyton going into year 2?
I think that they still see upside with Tyler Guyton. So I think they're fine with that. Now this season, especially with a new offensive line coach, maybe they feel differently after the season because you'll have some coaches around him that obviously didn't draft him, and so maybe they feel differently. But I haven't gotten the sense from them that they're out on Tyler Guyton and then they need to replace him or anything like that. But I am interested to see if they can finally find some success on the offensive line without needing to have 3-4, first round picks up there. It just seems like other teams are doing that. They're finding ways to, fill holes with, guys that you don't have to, spend a significant pick on. And so there was a time where I really did believe that, hey, you better spend at least 3 ones on that offensive line because look at how many ones other teams are spending on their defensive line. It makes sense. But I've kind of gone away from that just because, I've covered the Cowboys for 14 years and they've spent a lot of picks and hit on a lot of them on that offensive line, and it hasn't gotten them any closer to a parade.
Would you be for or against Ashton Jeanty at 12?
All for. There's not a player that will be there at 12 that I will be more all for than Ashton Jeanty. And the reason I say that because it goes back to my earlier comments about how I don't think they're going to be very aggressive in free agency or via trade. And so when I look at that Eagles offense, the comp I make for the Cowboys would be like, well, how do you think Dak would look if he had CeeDee Lamb, but his number 2 receiver was like, I don't know, Amon St. Brown, and his running back was Josh Jacobs. That's what Jalen Hurts has right now, and I don't see them making moves to get that level of a player. So how can they get that type of an impact player on offense? They probably got to draft him, and I think they do need probably 2 more impactful offensive playmakers, and maybe they trade for somebody like they did for Cooks. But I can't count on that. Whereas if Ashton Jeanty is there at 12, that's somebody that you got a big-time playmaker there. You got CeeDee Lamb. Maybe Jake Ferguson has a bounce-back year, and then maybe you get someone that steps up to be your number 2. There's nobody that – unless there's something that comes out at the Combine week or something. But as we sit here today, I don't think that there's something that I would be more on board with than Ashton Jeanty at 12.
And, John, the final question I got for you is, do you think with all these coaches, especially the college coaches, do you worry about a learning curve problem of not being NFL coaches or understanding, and I think, coaches is coaching, I guess, but I wonder if you feel like there might be a little bit of a learning curve for these guys.
It could be. I didn't even think about that. That is a good point.
Because there's a lot of them. There's a lot. Yeah.
For sure. The one thing I'll say, though, is that what could help is if you see them implementing some of the stuff that makes that offense maybe add more stuff that we see from the college game that makes it – because it just was getting to a point where it's getting kind of stale. Like, right. Not to say that if you have everybody healthy and you have like a legit number 2 receiver and a legit number 1 running back that maybe the offense would have been better, but it just lacked creativity. So if you see some stuff that, hey, this looks like they're grabbing some of this stuff from the college game and it's helping some other guys be more productive, I think guys buy into that. But, if they're not doing that and it's kind of a stale, boring offense, that could be an issue with those young coaches, no question. But I think the reason you add those coaches is because you are looking to get more creative. I don't know. I feel like all sports they're more trickle up than they are trickle down. It's not like what you see at the NFL level trickles down to high school. High school stuff trickles up to college. College stuff trickles up to the NFL. Right. So, particularly on offense. And it's an offensive-driven league. So, if they do that stuff and they keep it interesting, you certainly saw that with Detroit with things that Ben Johnson was doing. It was always entertaining, and the guys were all bought in because it's like you never know. Like this play could be for you, where it just hasn't felt like that in Dallas for a little bit.
John, thank you so much for the time. As always, enjoy the weekend, man.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on.